Hi, Mia. Congratulations
Hi.
on such an inspiring film. Um, why don't you tell me how you became involved or wanted to tell this story about the Lincoln Detox Center?
Um, Probably it was about 8 years ago that I met Dr. Mario Wexu, who was Mitulu Shakur, the Black Panthers, and the Young Lords, their acupuncture teacher who was based in Montreal. And Montreal, back in the 1970s, had the first acupuncture school in North America. So out in the South Bronx, the Young Lords, the Black Panthers, Dr. Mitulu Shakur, who was Mitulu Shakur back then, a member of the Republic of New Africa, were trying to find a non-chemical way to treat heroin withdrawal symptoms. They learned about acupuncture and connected to Mario Wexu here, and then I heard about it from Mario's daughter, who was just telling me, like, my dad was involved in this really crazy program that he helped. He went to the South Bronx, helped teach the Black Panthers and the Young Lords acupuncture to help get their community off of heroin. And so it was just super fascinating. And I started writing to Mitulu Shakur, who's been incarcerated since 1986 and was going to LA for another reason. He was near Los Angeles, so I went to visit him for the first time in 2013, and then eventually got, started pursuing the research back then.
Wow, that's incredible. And I guess for folks, I suppose, who maybe don't know, you're based in Montreal, so that's where that connection came from.
Right. Yeah.
I watched actually this film before this movement, kind of recently took off with Black Lives Matter has been going on obviously for many years. However, just this recent push of activism, and I just felt like seeing this film now, has like another level of relevance. How do you think the film speaks, I think, now to audiences as we find ourselves in like at this time of unrest?
Well, I think this film provides some historical context in support for the defund the police movement, because as we see, and a lot of these radical political groups like the Black Panthers, the Young Lords, the Weather Underground, a lot of these movements were surveyed and targeted by the counterintelligence programs. So there was a huge law enforcement effort and personnel put into surveying these groups to try and discredit them. So there's that. There's also just this idea that what's happening today, it's not new at all. It's getting to a breaking point, but it's been going on. Nothing's really changed. So and there are people like Mitulu Shakur and other political prisoners who are still in prison for fighting police, for resisting police oppression. This has been going on since the 70s, since the 60s.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what was like this balance of inspiring but also frustrating in watching the film, because as you see this footage of people literally fighting police brutality and trying to take control of their health, and yet there is all this movement to push back and push these people down. And so it's kind of like one step forward, so some steps back. So it's important, I think, to have films like this now where you can have that mirror into the past. I was really fascinated just to discover actually that acupuncture's like addiction treating abilities came from the Black Lords and from the Young Lords and the Black Panthers, which is an incredible history. Is this something that is, relatively known through parts of the States or even in New York today?
Well, that was another inspiration. The history has not really been told accurately. Like, it's been, their work has been omitted from the history. And how that happened was, while they were working at the Lincoln Hospital, getting funding from the city to have this experimental acupuncture program that was run by activists, they also had to have a white doctor. Well, they didn't have to have a white doctor, but they had to have a doctor to oversee the program. And he was this man named Dr. Michael Smith. And the original Lincoln Detox was shut down in the late 70s. And then in 1985, when all the radicals were gone, which there's a whole story there, which you can see in the film, but basically Dr. Michael Smith incorporated this NADA protocol and did not give credit to the whole collective, because back then it was very important for them to work as a collective. They were, so it's more like they were just sort of omitted. They were left out of this. They weren't given the proper credit that they deserved. And now, since this film has come out, and also the story has been coming out the last 8 years or so. There's been different journalists, there's been different students of Walter Bosque, who was one of the young lords, that are kind of rewriting this narrative, which is great. So, and my film is part of that, but it's not just, there's like kind of a movement bigger than the film, kind of a wave that's actually just really rewriting history, which is awesome.
That is great. There was so much actually history to this story. You edited it yourself. How was that like to take so much archival footage, obviously so many pieces to the story, including as you get closer to the bank heist at the end of the film, what was that like actually putting it together in a cohesive, engaging arc?
Well, that was a huge, almost 2 years of work off and on. And I did have help from 2 different editors at different periods that helped with different parts. But I mean, it was extremely difficult. It's hard to explain how. I think it's because that for one reason, the main character, Mutulu Shakur, is in prison and we couldn't access him. We couldn't actually, all our requests to record any interviews with him were denied. So I had a few archives that I could use, but we wanted to make sure that he was still the heart of the film and sort of represent him without actually having material to represent him. And also just discovering these archives, seeking these archives out, that was a whole process, because as we kept editing the film, the more it became clear that I felt it absolutely required to have these archives to really bring us back into to really set the climate of the time. And so yeah, I mean, it's hard, when you're doing I learned a lot editing it, and it was also a back and forth process with people who were interviewed in the film, just to have the collaboration to make sure the representations were to make sure I understood the point of view as much as possible, because I wasn't born in 1970. I'm white and I'm Canadian. So I wanted to make sure I really got it right. So there was several, 3 or 4 people who were watching and giving feedback. So it was quite collaborative.
Yeah, that makes sense.
More so than maybe other documentary, that makes it complicated, but at the same time, I was more confident about it, knowing that I had this guidance.
So were you ever actually even able to speak to Mutulu Shakur by phone ever, or is it always by letters?
No, I was able to visit him, so I can visit him in person. So I probably the first time was in 2013. So I visited him maybe almost around 8 times or so, maybe 10 over the years, because I was going to LA often, and I could talk to him on the phone, but they've just refused. In fact, not just myself, but he has not been able to speak to any member of the press since, I think, 2003. And the Bureau, the prison, the Bureau of Prisons doesn't have to give a reason. They don't, they could just deny people. So which it's frustrating for him also, because he doesn't feel like he has free speech, that he feels, he can't speak.
Yeah, presumably
literally
they'll see him as some sort of threat, which is really unfortunate. Has he had a chance to see the film?
No, that's another thing. We're not even, he can't even see the film. I did send him a transcript. So in the transcript, we tried to describe a bit what the archives look like, and we put some photos in the printout, but he hasn't seen it yet. We are his friends and family, like there's a group of people who have been working really hard to get to have a compassionate release campaign, a successful one. So he's been denied twice for compassionate release, but there's still a few other chances.
And so the hope, I guess, with this film is that it helps raise that awareness. Hey.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it helps to kind of contribute to the counter narrative of what is out there, which is that he's this criminal bank robber, and he has been in prison for 34 years, and he's an elder, he's sick, he has cancer now, so like he's not a threat to society, and there's COVID in where he's at, so there's a lot of there's some urgency to it. So hopefully the judge will release him. It's like kind of it's doing this. I realize how the legal system, as we all know, in the U.S. it's very difficult. Like I can't even imagine what families of people who don't have resources or money do, because even just any kind of legal action or campaign or like everything's just so expensive, like you really have to have resources to be able to fight the system in any way.
Can you share how people can support?
Yeah. There's a website, mitulushakur.org, and there's his friends and family update that regularly with updates on his case and his health. And you can write letters to him, you can donate money, and you can find out more about him on that website.
Oh, that's great. Is there anything else about the film, I guess, that maybe I didn't touch on? I did think it was interesting that you decided to focus very much on the history when you could have focused on what's happening in the present. So if you want to briefly touch on that. Okay.
Well, I think it's because it was a history that hasn't been told and that people didn't understand. And acupuncture is so, it's so accessible now, but it really wasn't then. And they really, like the first community acupuncture clinic in North America was in the South Bronx and run by these political activists. And it was only in the 90s that acupuncturists could become licensed and not work under the supervision of a doctor. And they were very instrumental in getting these laws changed so that people could practice. I mean, direct students of Mitulu's are the ones who actually started the first schools and who really, fought to have access to make like acupuncture accessible. So, but I will say that we are doing a podcast right now called Dope is Death, the podcast, where we are focusing a little bit more on the present. It's been our quarantine project, and it's a complementary project to the documentary, but with different information and some other interviews. So we're hoping that will be up by the end of, maybe by the beginning of August, or by the end of the month.
Okay. Oh, that's great. That's soon. So yeah, we should check that out. That's so exciting. I was really pleased and blown away to learn about this history. Also someone that does acupuncture, I had no idea. And so, yeah, thank you so much, obviously, for sharing this film and for sharing this knowledge. And yeah, we're really grateful to be able to screen it at the festival.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having it.